In the previous topic, we discussed about the government budgeting, and today we'll be discussing about the FRBM Act and fiscal deficit. Now, FRBM stands for Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, which is from 2003, a crucial piece of legislation in India's fiscal policy. Its primary aim is to ensure fiscal discipline and promote long-term macroeconomic stability by setting targets for reducing government deficits. The Act also increases transparency and accountability in countries' fiscal management. Let's look at some of the important aspects, key provisions, and objectives of FRBM Act. First is fiscal deficit reduction. Act's core purpose is to set a legal framework to limit the government's fiscal deficit. Aim to reduce the fiscal deficit to 3% of GDP by 2008-2009. However, this target has been revised multiple times, notably by the NKCN committee, which recommended a new debt-to-GDP ratio target of 60% for the general government, 40% for the centre, and 20% for the states by 2023-2024. Elimination of revenue deficit. A key objective was to eliminate the revenue deficit. This implies that the government's borrowings should be used to finance capital expenditure, asset creation, not for revenue expenditure, day-to-day consumption. The concept of effective revenue deficit was later reduced to reflect the objective more. Introduction of transparency. The Act mandates the government to present three key documents in Parliament along with the Union Budget: Medium-term Fiscal Policy Statement, Macroeconomic Framework Statement, Fiscal Policy Strategy Statement. Then comes escape clauses. This provision allows the government to deviate from the fiscal deficit target in exceptional circumstances such as a national calamity, a national security crisis, or a severe economic downturn. This provides necessary flexibility during unforeseen events. Now, types of fiscal deficits. Understanding the different types of deficits is fundamental to comprehending government finances. First is revenue deficit, RD. When the government's revenue expenditures, example salaries, subsidies, interest payments, exceeds its revenue receipts. Revenue deficit is revenue expenditure exceeds revenue receipts, example taxes, dividends, fees. A high revenue deficit indicates that the government is borrowing to finance its day-to-day operations, which is financially unhealthy. Next is fiscal deficit. Most comprehensive measure of deficit, it represents total borrowings required by the government to bridge the gap between its total expenditure and total receipts, excluding borrowings. A high fiscal deficit indicates a greater need for borrowing, which can lead to a higher interest rates and a larger debt burden. Fiscal deficit equals to total expenditure minus total receipts excluding borrowings. Primary deficit. This deficit shows the government's borrowing needs after accounting for interest payments on past loans. A zero primary deficit implies that the government is borrowing only to pay the interest on its past debt, not to fund new expenditure. Primary deficit equals to fiscal deficit minus interest payments. Effective revenue deficit, ERD. This is a modified version of the revenue deficit. It accounts for the grants given by the central government to state governments for the creation of capital assets. Since these grants contribute to asset creation, they are subtracted from the revenue deficit to give a more accurate picture of the government's consumption spending. So effective revenue deficit is equals to revenue deficit minus grants for the creation of capital assets. Now, last year, previous year questions. In the context of the Indian economy, open market operations refers to borrowing by scheduled banks from the RBI, lending by commercial banks to industry and trade, purchase and sale of government securities to the RBI. C's right answer. Auction of government securities by the Government of India. So we have done this several times. Purchase and sale of government securities, and we have remembered the rule. Whenever open market operations come into any of the questions, we always revise our rules. What are the rules? Open market operations rules is so DS, and so whenever we have to decrease the money supply, we have to sell the government securities. And IB is increase in money supply, we have to buy government securities. Simple. Okay. Now, root cause analysis. Discussions about the instruments of monetary supply by the RBI to control the money supply in the economy. Yes. Next is with reference to the Union government consists of following statements. All expenditures incurred on the consolidated fund of India have to be put to the vote of the Parliament. The appropriation bill has to be passed before the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha before it can become a law. Both are correct or no? Neither. One or two. None. How? Let's have a look. This question tests the fundamental process in budget. Statement 1 is incorrect because there is category of expenditure known as charged expenditure. On the consolidated fund of India, which is not subject to a vote. This includes the salaries and allowances of the President, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and judges. These expenditures can be discussed but not voted upon in Parliament. Achha. Consolidated Fund of India. Consolidated Fund of India has the expenditure such as charge expenditure. And this fund includes salaries and losses of President, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, everyone. They can be discussed but not be voted upon. Statement 2 is incorrect because the appropriation of bill has to be passed with the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Is a money bill. Money bills are only voted on under Lok Sabha. पहले हमने ये चीज़ पढ़ी है राज्यसभा में मोस्टली बिल्स पहुंचते नहीं हैं. The Rajya Sabha can also discuss and suggest amendments which the Lok Sabha may or may not accept. The Rajya Sabha must return the bill within 14 days, after which it is deemed passed. Okay. So the money bills are voted only in the Lok Sabha. Which one of the following is likely to be the most inflationary effect? We have seen this question several times before as well. And answer is D, creating new money to finance a budget deficit. That is most inflationary. Borrowing from banks is also inflationary, but not as much as creating new money. The concept here is deficit financing, its inflationary impact. Okay, let's move further. Which of the following is the components of the revenue expenditure of the Government of India? Interest payments on loans, expenditure on subsidies, grants given to foreign governments. All three of them are revenue expenditures, 1, 2, and 3. The question tests the understanding of revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure is that which does not create an asset or reduce a liability. All three. So revenue expenditure हमें जब भी चेक करना है हमें ये देखना है कि वो कहीं एसेट क्रिएट तो नहीं करता या वो कोई लाइबिलिटी को रिड्यूस तो नहीं कर रहा क्योंकि तभी वो रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर है. So interest payments on loans are a recurring expense that does not create an asset. Expenditure on subsidies is a transfer payment versus specific industry does not create an asset. Grants given to foreign governments are also transfer payments and do not create assets for the Government of India. All are routine non-asset creating expenses being in components of revenue. Which of the following is most accurate statement about the fiscal deficit? Deficit between total expenditure and total receipts, including borrowings, total expenditure and total receipts. Between revenue expenditure and revenue receipts, this is between total expenditure and total receipts, including borrowings. Total expenditure and total receipts, excluding borrowings. Let's have a look. The definition of fiscal deficit is crucial here. The fiscal deficit represents the total borrowing requirement of the government. Therefore, it's calculated as difference between the government's total spending, revenue plus capital, and its total non-debit receipts, revenue plus capital. But definitely borrowing are the means to finance deficit and are not included in the receipt side for calculating it. Option A is incorrect because it includes borrowings. Option B and D define revenue deficit and capital deficit, not a formal concept, respectively not the fiscal deficit. So, first about total expenditures and total receipts. Difference between total expenditure and total receipts, excluding borrowing. That means if go any borrowings, that has to be excluded from total expenditure and total receipts. Let's move further. In India, deficit financing is used for raising resources for economic development, redemption of public debt, adjusting the balance of payments, reducing the foreign debt. It's economic development. Deficit financing is the practice of a government spending more money than receives its revenue. In developing countries like India, the primary purpose of deficit financing is to generate additional demand and finance large-scale projects and welfare schemes that are crucial for accelerating economic development. By increasing spending, the government aims to boost aggregate demand, stimulate production, create employment, and invest in infrastructure to foster long-term growth. The other options are not the primary goal of deficit financing in the Indian context. Instead, they are secondary effects of unrelated concepts. What are the secondary effects? Redemption of public debt, adjusting the balance of payments, reducing the foreign debt. These are secondary. Okay. प्राइमरी तो यही है कि हमें ग्रोथ देखनी है और ग्रोथ के लिए इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट के लिए ही डेफिसिट फाइनेंसिंग हो पाएगा. Which of the following statement is correct about the fiscal responsibility and budget management, which is FRBM Act 2003, aims to ensure intergenerational equity in fiscal management. Act aims to provide a legal framework for fiscal consolidation. Act requires the government to present a medium-term fiscal policy statement along with the annual budget. Present a medium-term fiscal policy statement along with the annual budget. So all three, 1, 2, and 3 will be correct. This question directly legal framework, medium-term fiscal policy statement along with the annual budget, aims to ensure intergenerational equity. That's the objective of the FRBM Act. So one is correct as the Act's goal is to prevent future generations from being burdened by excessive public debt, thereby ensuring intergenerational equity. Statement 2 is also correct. The Act provides a clear, rule-based legal framework to guide fiscal policy towards consolidation, reducing deficits and debt. Statement 3 is correct as the FRBM Act mandates the presentation of three key documents, including the medium-term fiscal policy statement to enhance transparency. All three are core principles of the FRBM Act. So perfect, this is correct. That's all for today. Thank you so much.